Thanks, Pat. And at 10 to 11, there's a 10% answer to a 100% problem in taxi. But now on 1, it's time for the main evening news at 9 o'clock.
Hints of Fianna Fáil Labour talks as poll shows backing for former coalition partners. Bosnian government army in Bihać ignores 7 o'clock surrender deadline. Irish ferries to take French government to court over refusal to allow new service. Good evening. There are strong indications tonight that negotiations between Fianna Fáil and Labour on the formation of a new government could get underway at the start of next week. With the latest opinion poll showing significant backing for the former coalition partners, it's thought that Dick Spring may announce tomorrow evening that he and Bertie Ahern are to enter substantive talks. In another development, senior Fine Gael deputies have warned against the party offering to support Dick Spring as Taoiseach. Our political editor, Donald Kelly.
So, yet another opinion poll clearly indicates a huge preference for Fianna Fáil and Labour in government. And that despite the fact that more than half the electorate believe Bertie Ahern and other Fianna Fáil ministers share equal responsibility with Albert Reynolds for the withholding from the Dáil of material information in the Father Smith case. But for Fine Gael, the Lansdowne survey represents more depressing news. Their support is down, and only 1 in 10 voters believe John Bruton would make the best Taoiseach. Asked about their preference for the next government, 61% of voters opted for the Fianna Fáil Labour alliance. The Rainbow Coalition was well behind with just 25% support. And on the question of who would make the best Taoiseach, Bertie Ahern had the backing of 50% of the electorate against Dick Spring, who had 30%, and John Bruton, who had 10%. In judging the party leaders, the electorate gave a further boost to Mr Ahern with a 68% satisfaction rating. Dick Spring scored 63%, Mary Harney 62%, and John Bruton 31%. With 7 out of 10 voters rejecting the idea of a rotating Taoiseach, the electorate is clearly opting for a Fianna Fáil Labour alliance led by Bertie Ahern. And they're doing so despite the belief of 7 in 10 that the Dáil was misled on the Father Smith affair. However, just 12% of voters think Mr Reynolds was solely responsible. 54% of them lay equal blame on Fianna Fáil ministers. But in spite of those misgivings, Fianna Fáil support at 45% has gone up 4 points since the IMS poll a week ago. Fine Gael at 16% are down 5. Labour 20% up 1. The Progressive Democrats at 7% are up 2 points. Democratic Left with 3% are up 1. The Greens 5% are down 2. Sinn Féin 2% are up 1. And others at 2% are unchanged. Well, this poll will give Dick Spring much food for thought as he decides whether he should open negotiations with Bertie Ahern or John Bruton. But with senior Fine Gael deputies up in arms against any suggestion that they should support Mr Spring for Taoiseach, a resumption of the Fianna Fáil Labour alliance is tonight looking more and more likely.
The Bosnian government army in the northwestern Bihać enclave has ignored an ultimatum from the Serbs to surrender. The commander of the Bosnian Serb forces said the defenders of Bihać had until 7 o'clock Irish time to capitulate. Earlier, the Serbs fired a missile at NATO jets over central Bosnia today, but it's been reported that a planned airstrike was vetoed by the United Nations.
These pictures from Bihać television reveal some of the suffering of the enclave's population. Recorded somewhere in the area in the last week, they confirm UN reports that people are terrified by the Serbs' advance. Tonight, after vowing to defy the Serb ultimatum to surrender, the Bosnian army barricaded streets with trees and burned out cars. The Serbs are said to have advanced to within half a mile of the town's hospital. The United Nations said the only glimmer of hope was that they weren't shelling residential areas. Clearly, the Bihać safe area has been overrun by the Serbs, and the Bosnian government is holding the United Nations responsible.
So we can say now, I will talk to General Rhodes here right now. Mr. Akashi is responsible for the death of 70,000 people in Bihać right now. There is no turning the key on the part of the United Nations.
General Rose refused to answer reporters' questions, but said he was still pursuing peace.
I'm going to say one thing and one thing only. I've come here this evening to talk to President Izetbegovic about working for peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I have a lot of people deployed, where we have made considerable achievements over the past 2.5 years, and I hope that we will go on being able to do a job of work, keeping the people of this country alive and trying to stop the sort of fighting, this ghastly fighting that we see going on in Bihać at the moment.
NATO jets were in another near miss from a Serb missile this morning. It was fired from Gornji Vakuf in central Bosnia. It's been reported that NATO had planned another airstrike against the Serbs, but that the UN wouldn't request it because of the situation on the ground. It's not clear if the airstrike was to be carried out before or after the Serb attack. Yet another crack emerged in the international consensus on Bosnia today when the United States deployed 2,000 Marines in the Adriatic Sea. The Pentagon says it's a precautionary measure, but the timing is ironic given that other Western nations have indicated that their troops may have to be withdrawn.
Irish Ferries is to ask the European Court to rule on the French government's decision not to allow it open a new ferry service to Brest. Irish Ferries claims the French government is preventing fair competition against French ferry operators, and this afternoon announced it had been forced to cancel plans for the service, which was due to begin operating next May.
Irish Ferries wants to open a new route to Brest for next year's holiday market, adding to their existing services to Cherbourg and Le Havre. It would be their shortest and quickest route, 15 hours compared with 17 and 21. Agreement was reached with the Brest Chamber of Commerce, which operates the French port, and a £3 million development would have put a new landing ramp into place, linking the port with Cork and Rosslare from next May. The plan had been welcomed in the travel trade, where there was strong booking interest, but intensive lobbying against the new service began in France, principally from the port of Roscoff, where Brittany Ferries operates.
We consider the action by the French government and the lobbying that has gone on in the Roscoff area against the development of the service to be in breach of EU law. So we have taken legal advice in this matter, and we're presently in the process of finalising our complaint to lodge with the European Commission in this respect.
Where did the lobbying against you come from?
There has been very, very extensive reporting in the French media from all the interests in the Roscoff region, talking about the potential impact that the new Brest service would have on the area in general. And of course we were dependent on the French government to give clearance for the development to go ahead, and literally they have refused. This of course is in spite of the fact that the French flag carrier has open and unrestricted access to Cork without any obstacles being placed in their way.
Irish Ferries announced the cancellation of their plans for Brest at the annual conference of the Irish Travel Agents Association in Cork this afternoon. Though Brittany Ferries has denied any involvement in the lobbying against the Brest plan, its chairman has been blamed by the Brest Chamber of Commerce for opposing it, and it is noted as unusual that the refusal of the plan was announced direct from the office of the French Prime Minister.
And now, on a bad day for Manchester United fans, sports news with Peter Collins.
Thanks, Mary. Yes, we start with soccer. Blackburn Rovers are the new leaders in the English FA Premiership after a 4-0 win over Queen's Park Rangers at Loftus Road today. Chris Sutton got the opener and Alan Shearer added a second-half hat-trick, and that brings their combined total to 32 goals so far this season. Well, meanwhile, Manchester United slipped to second place in the league after a 0-0 draw with Arsenal at Highbury. Today's Premiership fixture probably came as some relief to two clubs who have had a turbulent week. United, who saw their European dream as good as disappear on Wednesday night, were hoping to consolidate their position at the top of the Premiership, while Arsenal were seeking a win over the leaders to help detract from the Paul Merson affair. After Eddie McGoldrick had the first attempt on goal early in the game, Ian Wright, who had scored in his last 12 matches, saw his shot sail over after 12 minutes. If Arsenal had the better of the opening exchanges, then United could claim the latter part of the first half. Dennis Irwin brought a good save out of David Seaman, and minutes later the Arsenal keeper had to react quickly again to keep out a Mark Hughes shot. Gary Walsh, who had a nervous first half, kept United in the game as he stopped goal-worthy attempts from Dickoff and Ian Wright. Some rash challenges from both sides produced 7 yellow cards, and Manchester United's miserable week was compounded by Mark Hughes sending off in the 74th minute. So a rather lacklustre affair at Highbury finished Arsenal 0, Manchester United 0. Newcastle United could only pick up 1 point at home today. They were held to a 1-1 draw by lowly Ipswich Town at St James's Park. Liverpool stay fourth. They drew 1-1 with Tottenham, and Everton recorded their second win in 6 days when they defeated Chelsea by 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. At home, Galway United and the Bohemians drew at Terryland this evening. Bohemians led 2-0 at half-time, but Galway came back in the second half to share the points, and that means no change in their respective league positions. Now, the result there was Galway United 2, Bohemians 2. And the latest we have from the First Division matches on this evening: Finn Harps 1, Limerick 0, that's the latest score, and Longford Town 2, St James's Gate 0, latest score as well. In rugby, the Smithwick's Interprovincial Championship continued today, and Munster are now the only unbeaten team in the series. They had a convincing win over the Exiles, while Connacht had a surprise victory over Leinster at the Sports Ground in Galway. Well, now the main rugby scorelines. First, the Interprovincial Championship. The Exiles 8, Munster 46, or Connacht 20, Munster 19. And we can check now on the international result. That was Wales 12, South Africa 20. The result there, you didn't see the Exiles 8, Munster 46. On to Gaelic games now, and first one result from Division 4 of the National Hurling League. And an easy win for Monaghan. It was London 1-8, Monaghan 2-13. In the Leinster Senior Club Football Championship, St Joseph's of Laois and Seneschalstown from Meath were back in action again today. Their semi-final replay took place at Newbridge, and Brian Carthy was there.
It was always going to be difficult for the teams to reach the heights of the drawn game. And today the pace was just too frenetic and the mistakes were all too plentiful. Still, there was some good excitement value. The Laois champions rocked Seneschalstown in the opening minutes. This long delivery finished to the net by right corner forward Des Cooney. Hard to believe that goal was St Joseph's only score of the first half. Despite an abundance of possession, the Laois side kicked many wides and gave away good possession time and time again. Seneschalstown took some time to find the rhythm, but this point from Matty McCabe settled the Meath champions. Some good points followed for Seneschalstown. Left corner forward Stephen Dillon on target on this occasion. Full forward and captain Mark O'Brien kept St Joseph's in touch with this point from a free. But when Pádraig Coyle drove the ball past Emmett Burke, Seneschalstown took control of matters and won in the end by 8 points.
Well, Stephen Hendry is still on course for a place in tomorrow's final of the UK Snooker Championship against Ken Doherty. The world champion currently leads Peter Ebdon by 7 frames to 5 in their best of 17 frame semi-final. The big race of the day in England was the Hennessy Gold Cup at Newbury. Commercial Artist represented the Irish Challenge. With Graham Bradley up, he was well placed throughout the race, but with one fence to jump, it was the Gordon Richardson trained one man who had taken up the running.
One fence between one man and victory. Hasn't been asked a question yet. One man jumps it clear of Lord Relic in second and Commercial Artist third and Cogent 4. They're racing into the closing stages, and it's one man being chased all the time by Lord Relic, but it's one man who's going to hold him and win it. One man wins the 1994 Hennessy Cognac Gold Cup, and he wins it in a canter with his ears pricked, and Lord Relic is second and third, Commercial Artist.
And now to today's winners and starting prices from the meeting at Punchestown. First of all, the 12.45, number 5, Sign of Peace 8-1. 1.15, number 2, Scribbler 6-1. The 1.45, number 1, Double Symphony 9-4, joint favourite. The 2.15, number 1, Idiot's Venture 7-4. The 2.45, number 1, Merry Gale 9-4, co-favourite. The 3.15, number 9, Creative Blaze 10-1. And finally the 3.40, number 8, Shane's Hero 2-1 favourite. Well, finally, Ireland's women's tennis team have fought off relegation in the European Championship by defeating Norway in Copenhagen. Gina Nyland beat Norway's number 1 in straight sets, and Leslie O'Halloran also won her match in 3 sets. That's the sport for now. Back to you, Mary.
And the main story again this evening, an opinion poll to be published tomorrow morning shows 61% in favour of a continuation of the Fianna Fáil Labour coalition. It's now thought Dick Spring may announce tomorrow that he and Bertie Ahern are to start substantive talks. And that's Saturday's 9 o'clock news. On This Week on Radio 1 from 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Ivan Yates of Fine Gael talks about the latest political developments. Back now to this evening, though. There'll be late headlines on this channel at 20 minutes past midnight. Meanwhile, from Peter and from me, good evening.